All right, let's jump right in. We're about to crack open a 1,500-year-old legal mystery. Think of it like a cold case, pulled straight from the pages of the Talmud, and it all kicks off with a massive royal feast, two very different kings, and a really explosive question about what exactly was on the menu. And here it is, the question that gets the whole ball rolling. Did King Jehoshaphat, a man famous for being righteous, go to a party thrown by the infamous idol worshiper King Ahab and knowingly eat non-kosher meat? Now, for the ancient sages, this wasn't just some historical trivia night. This was their way of wrestling with a huge question they were facing in their own time. Where do you draw the line? What do you do with a fellow Jew who strays from the path? This whole debate, it was their laboratory for figuring that out. So the whole case really boils down to this one verse. This is Exhibit A. On the surface, it seems pretty clear, right? Ahab, the bad guy, throws a huge barbecue for Jehoshaphat, the good guy, and then incites him to go to war. But, as you're about to see, when it comes to the Talmud, nothing is ever as simple as it looks. Okay, so to really get what's at stake here, you need to know this one key legal term, a mumar. Specifically, we're talking about a Jew who worships idols. The whole debate, the entire thing, hangs on this one question. If a Jewish idolater, like King Ahab, slaughters an animal, is that meat kosher? And this feast, well, it becomes the ultimate test case. This brings us to the first part of the investigation. You can think of it as the cross-examination. This is where the Talmudic sages take that biblical verse, the main piece of evidence, and they start poking holes in it, looking for any shred of reasonable doubt. So the first challenge is so simple, but it's absolutely brilliant. The verse says Ahab slaughtered animals for Jehoshaphat. Okay, we got that. But did Jehoshaphat actually eat the meat from those specific animals? Maybe he just went to the party to be polite, but, brought his own food. But the text has a counter-argument. It all comes down to that one word, incited. The sages argue that in this context, when you're talking about persuading a person to do something, incitement means more than just a good speech. It means you're whining and dining them, using food and drink to get them on your side. So yeah, he ate. But they're not done yet. The cross-examination continues. They raise another possibility. Okay, fine. Maybe he took part in the celebration. But what if he only drank the wine and just, politely passed on the main course? And believe it or not, this is a really crucial distinction. And this is where you see some just incredible legal detail. See, drinking Ahab's wine, that might have been totally okay, because the specific rabbinic rule against that kind of wine hadn't even been made yet. But eating the meat? Oh, that is a whole different ballgame. If Ahab's status as an idolater made his slaughter invalid, then that meat was non-kosher from the very beginning. But that whole he only drank theory, it gets shot down by two really powerful arguments. First, just common sense. A king doesn't show up to a state dinner and just have a few glasses of wine. It's just not how things are done. And second, and this is the real knockout punch, the verse itself links the two actions. It says Ahab slaughtered and he incited. The incitement happened with the meat he slaughtered. Okay, so it's looking pretty certain that Jehoshaphat ate the meat. Case closed? Not even close. The investigation just pivots. It takes a sharp turn. If the problem is Ahab's slaughter, what if Ahab wasn't the one who did the slaughtered? And just like that, a whole new line of inquiry opens up. Was there someone else on the scene? A third party who could have performed a perfectly valid, totally kosher slaughter for the feast. Let's run down the list of potential suspects. So, two possibilities come up right away, and they get dismissed just as fast. First up, what about Obadiah? He was Ahab's servant, but famously righteous. Well, the verse says animals were slaughtered in abundance. There's no way one guy could have handled that many animals. Okay, what about the 7,000 righteous men who were hiding from Queen Jezebel? Well, they were in hiding. They weren't exactly hanging around the palace kitchen waiting to help with catering. So if it wasn't a famous righteous person, what about Ahab's general staff? Maybe some of them were decent guys. To figure this out, the Talmud brings in this incredible verse from Proverbs. It's almost like a rule of thumb for judging a leader's entire administration. And this just lays out the logic so clearly. The proverb basically says, like master, like servant. A corrupt leader who listens to lies, he's going to surround himself with corrupt people. So Ahab's staff? Probably wicked. But the opposite is also true. A righteous leader like Jehoshaphat, he'd have righteous servants. And this is the key to the next theory. And this leads us to what feels like the perfect alibi. the one that could solve everything. What if there were two separate kitchens, two separate catering crews? Ahab's wicked servants cooked for his people, and Jehoshaphat's righteous servants prepared a completely kosher meal for their king and his men. Problem solved, right? Not so fast. See, another verse describes the two kings sitting together in public in a special formation that looked like half of a circular threshing floor. Now, why does that matter? Because that's how the high court, the Sanhedrin, used to sit. The whole point was to put on a show of unity and friendship for everyone to see. Having two separate buffets would have completely ruined that political message. It just doesn't make sense. So at this point, every logical theory has been debunked. So what happens now? The Talmud takes this fascinating, almost wild detour. It brings in what seems like a totally unrelated story about the prophet Elijah, just to see if it can shed some light on our mystery. Here's the verse. The prophet Elijah is hiding out in the middle of nowhere, and he's being brought meat by something called orvim. Now, there's an ancient tradition, quoted right in the Talmud, that this meat came directly from King Ahab's kitchen. And if a prophet ate it, it must have been kosher, right? But of course, this is the Talmud, so before they can even get to the point, they have to stop and debate what the word orevim even means. Does it mean literal ravens, like the birds? Or could it be two guys whose name just happened to be Oreb? It's this perfect little side debate that just shows you how much they cared about every single detail. But in the end, this whole fascinating story about Elijah gets thrown out of court. It's inadmissible. Why? Because Elijah wasn't just grabbing a bite to eat. He was following a direct, explicit command from God. And when God tells you to do something, that's a unique situation. It's a miracle, an exception to the rule. You can't use a miracle to create a general legal precedent for everybody else. So after all the arguments, all the counter-arguments, the rabbit holes, the detours, we have finally reached the end. The investigation is over, and it is time for the final verdict. So let's just recap how we got here. We started with a piece of evidence. The sages tried to poke holes in it, saying he didn't eat or maybe he only drank, but none of those attempts worked. Then they investigated every possible alternative suspect, Obadiah, the hidden righteous men, Jehoshaphat's own servants, and they eliminated every single one. So with all other possibilities exhausted, the only thing left is the original interpretation. The story has to stand as proof that, at that point in history, the slaughter of a Jewish idolater was considered valid. So what do we take away from all of this? I mean, it's way more than just a ruling on ancient dietary law. What we just walked through is a masterclass in critical thinking. It shows this incredible commitment to looking at a problem from every single angle you can imagine, to challenging your own assumptions, and to following the evidence wherever it leads, even if it leads you to an answer that feels a little uncomfortable. It's a reminder that sometimes the relentless journey of asking the questions is just as important as the final answer itself.